Hello and welcome to episode 334 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Hello, Ian. What's going on?
It's Wednesday. It's the morning, and I'm still drinking coffee. We're recording even earlier this week than we normally do because, Jason, you've got something very special going on.
I do. I have encroached into my typical lunch hour break here at work to record this because later today I will be joining not an airline, but a railroad, specifically Amtrak, to be on the media departure out of New York up to Boston or really New England, somewhere in New England. Don't know where yet. On the next gen Acela, which is very exciting and only about half a decade behind schedule. So things are looking good.
That's like one Boeing 777X delay.
Yeah, I mean, this thing was originally announced in 2016, finally hitting revenue service in 2025. So if you compare it to Boeing standards, actually, it's still bad.
Yeah.
Well, it's not great.
Have a good time.
Thank you.
And we'll be interested to figure out how you get home next week.
Me too, because my return train is canceled. Because of course it is.
Because of course it is. Speaking of returns being canceled, there are some folks in Nuuk'd, Greenland, who are trying to figure out how to get home because yesterday's United flight from Newark to Nuuk'd returned to Newark.
Oh, the worst shameful event.
Not because there was anything wrong with the United aircraft, not because there was any disturbance on board, not for any reason that United had any control over. However, the flight returned because the return flight from Nuuk'd to Newark would not be able to operate if they landed in Nuuk'd because the Danish airports authorities have suspended international passenger screening at Nuuk'd for unspecified training failures of the folks working at the airport.
Yikes. I feel like, I don't know, we've heard this before. I think the entry into service of the new terminal was like slightly delayed because of certification of the security procedures at the airport. So this isn't a huge surprise, but it was very ironic that it came, or coincidental, I should say, that this issue, which led to United actually suspending sales of the route through the end of the summer season, came on the same day that Newark said this route is great and we will be returning in 2026 summer season. So that timing could not have been worse because it looks like they won't be able to complete this summer season. Really don't know what is the deal with the United or other passengers. This isn't just a United issue. This is also SAS, I believe, has a flight to Copenhagen.
So SAS was scheduled to operate through today. Today was their last summer season service.
And it did not happen.
To Nuuk'd. And that flight was canceled. So there are folks in Greenland who I assume will be put on the Air Greenland A330 to Copenhagen, probably via Kangerlussuaq, where they can do the security screening. Because what the Greenland Airports Authority has said, they will, in short order, perform international security screening at Kangerlussuaq, which is the only other runway that can handle large jet traffic. So that'll be interesting to see how quickly they can make that switch. But just an odd thing to see that this has come up again.
Yeah. It looks like there are a few flights to Reykjavik currently out of Greenland. Not sure what the passenger capacity is on that because they're using the tiniest variant of the -8, both Air Greenland and Icelandair. Interestingly, man, that's a long way on a not very big airplane.
Got a great video of the transatlantic Nuuk'd to Reykjavik on the -8 on our YouTube channel.
Yikes. It's actually a -200, so I guess it could be smaller.
It could be even smaller.
It could be smaller, but a United 73 MAX, we're talking about over 100 people if it was selling well, and I think it was. So I don't know what United is doing with those passengers because it's not really their fault, but they're still responsible
for them.
So I don't know what they do. I guess they're very slowly over the course of days shuttle them over to Iceland. But interesting, I guess a flight from Greenland to Denmark still counts as international, even though that one's confusing.
Yeah, you still have to go through a passport control check because I think it has something to do with Schengen and Greenland's status as opposed to Denmark's status. I can go back to the video that Gabe shot for the A330neo inaugural because there was something there where he had to go through a passport control, even though it's technically some sort of domestic flight.
There was also some speculation that this was kind of, I don't want to call it retaliation, but punishment to the U.S., that specifically to United, to get them to cancel flights, because this happened to come the day before Denmark summoned a U.S. envoy after report of conducting some sort of influence operations in Greenland. Not really sure what is going on there, but this would have been using a shotgun to kill a fly in the house. Everything else. You can't really get anywhere out of Greenland right now, and they're not going to cast such a wide net to punish the U.S. I mean, maybe they would, but I really, really don't think so. So just very coincidental timing.
That seems rather unlikely. We'll keep abreast of this. Hopefully they figure out, I mean, the Nuuk airport rollout has been beset by problems in general at the beginning of the month. And this has nothing to do with the airport specifically, it just happened to the airport. But at the beginning of the month, everyone who worked at the airport went reindeer hunting because it was reindeer hunting season. And that's a thing in Greenland that is extremely important, both practically and culturally. So to be expected, but it's just kind of a bookending of the months. But the rollout of the new terminal and the transfer of everything from Kangerlussuaq down to Nuuk has been a bit of a rough bit of business, shall we say, especially with the weather, which was not unknown. So it's one of those things that...
Not without its problems.
It hasn't been without its problems. So hopefully everything gets ironed out, smoothed out, and they're back up and running in relatively short order. Let's head to Korea, where Korean Air has signaled its intent to purchase 103 Boeing aircraft. Good round number.
Yeah, that's a nice specific number. This was announced at the Korea-US Business Roundtable, quote, partnership for a manufacturing renaissance. And
cool.
I don't know what the hell that is, but airplanes came out of it. So
came out of it. So
that's great.
That's why we're involved in the manufacturing renaissance. The order includes MAX 10s, 777-8 freighters, 777-9 passenger aircraft, and 25 787-10s. So, of the order of more than 100 Boeing aircraft, only 25 of those are actual orders, based on the fact that none of the other aircraft exist yet.
Orders for aircraft that are a sure thing, that are certified and will be a thing. I wouldn't say that they're not real because none of this is real. It's an intent to order.
Yes, this is not a firm order.
Right. But the bulk of it, the 20 777-9, 50 737-10s, the 8 777X freighters, well, those aircraft aren't certified yet. And at this rate, they may never be. I'm sure they will be at one day, but
one day.
That's a lot of airplanes. 103. Interesting number.
They, both Boeing and Korean, say it is the largest single order from an Asian carrier for wide body aircraft.
Well, don't forget that Korean is eating for two these days. Now that it is fully absorbed Asiana, that's a lot of fleet to refresh. So it's not just Korean anymore. It is the Korean airline.
That's true. Though Asiana does have Airbus aircraft still on order.
Yes, and Korean's been taking those, at least some of those A350s in the Korean livery, right?
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if we see a top-up for any Airbus orders. However, they still have quite a few on order. I think it's more than 36 A320neo family aircraft outstanding and more than 30 A350s still to be delivered. So I don't think we're going to see a top up anytime soon with Airbus, but you never know.
Yeah, good day for Korean. They just swapped my flight from Busan to Tokyo from a 73 MAX to a 321 Neo. So I'm pretty happy about that.
There you go.
They also switched, less happy about this, my 747-8i to an A380. Less happy about that one, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I mean,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
conflicted. I'm conflicted on that one.
that's a fair thing to be conflicted about.
I've been on a lot of A380s, but the 748, like, aren't exactly a whole lot of those.
Yeah. And I know that you had booked specifically.
I did, and Korean's A380, well, it's no Etihad or Emirates A380. It is a little elderly at this point.
Less well loved, shall we say.
Yes.
Let's stay in the neighborhood and talk about an even less real order. This has been bandied about all summer, and now it has expanded from Airbus to Boeing. So beginning, I want to say in late June, early July, Bloomberg began citing people familiar with the matter, those close to the situation, et cetera, saying that China was looking to order about 500 planes from Airbus. And
Healthy
there were
appetite.
all sorts of timings of who, when the Chinese president meets with the French president, this happens, when that happens, the order will be announced. Now we're getting into 500 aircraft for Chinese airlines for Boeing.
So nice to be back in the land of one day Chinese airlines are being forced to return their 737s to sender, that being Boeing. And the next day we're talking about maybe a 500 order split to half of that to Boeing. It's just whiplash again.
I know, right? It's the Airbus breakdown seems to be firming up along the lines of 100 planes each for the big three. So Air China, China Southern, China Eastern. And then Xiamen Airlines and Sichuan Airlines would pick up the balance. And then on the Boeing side, no idea. So we're kind of at the beginning of the rumor mill sussing out what that order could look like. Interesting, though, I didn't realize that Chinese airlines have not ordered any Boeing aircraft since 2017.
Did not know. Has it really been that long?
It's been that long. When you think about that timeline, it makes sense. 2017, there was an order, and then 2019 was the 737 MAX grounding. And so from there on, they're not going to order anymore. But I didn't realize that it was 2017. It was 2 years before the grounding that they made any orders. So that would be a huge, huge win, both commercially for Boeing as well as for I think frosty is too warm a term, commercial relationship between China and the United States at the moment. So we'll see where this one goes, but be prepared for more sources close to people who might know what they're talking about over the next couple of weeks as this all begins to play out. Speaking of the 737 MAX grounding, Boeing has removed the last of the 737 MAX aircraft from Moses Lake that it initially stored there when it ran out of space closer to the Seattle area as the grounding progressed. So this aircraft will eventually be delivered to Air China, and it was first flown in early 2019. So they've done all the rework there, they've gotten it out of storage, and now they're preparing to deliver it. So good for them on clearing that backlog.
Yeah. I remember going out there, was it Moses Lake in 2021, I want to say, and it was truly just a parking lot, an overflowing parking lot of 737 MAX aircraft. Hard to picture it without those now, because that's the only state I know it in. I don't believe they have any commercial operations there, so it's really just kind of a gas and go and storage operation for Boeing, and there's also some military stuff there, but a lovely preserved time capsule of a passenger airline terminal. But I guess that's back to its roots at this point. I can't believe the parking lot is going to be cleared out.
Yeah. For its part, Boeing says they will continue to do delivery prep and rework out at Moses Lake. So there's still work to be done. But the initial stored batch of grounded 737 MAX, that's come to a close at Moses Lake.
Who is the last one going to? Do we know?
Air China.
Air China. Oh, Full circle.
There you go. Copa Airlines down in Panama says it may not take the 15 737 MAX 10s it has on order. They are satisfied at the moment with the mix of MAX 8 and 9 that they already have. The MAX 10, who knows when it'll be certified? So it sounds like they don't really want to deal with that. They're an airline that really prides itself on fleet commonality. And they say, well, we don't necessarily need the 10 right now. The 9 is good enough. And we ordered the 10 in 2017, and we probably won't get it until 2027. So maybe we convert these to existing MAX 8 and 9s, and then we take a look at it later on.
Cool. So my internet went out for about the last 30 seconds, but you kept talking through that whole thing. So I'm just going to nod and agree and say, yes, Copa, yes, trade in those planes for something that's real. That's a good plan. I'm shocked other airlines, looking at you, United, haven't quite done this just yet because they really need those MAX 10s, but they are a figment of everyone's imagination still.
So far. Let's turn our attention to the more commercial side of the business and talk about some routes. Frontier launched a whole bunch of new routes this week.
As it is known to do.
But these new routes...
a bit more tactical.
A bit more tactical. This is not just, let's see if we can make money flying between, I don't even have...
Choose carefully.
But here... they're going to try and make money between certain city pairs. And I'm going to list the city pairs, and then you tell me what those city pairs might have in common. Baltimore, Fort Lauderdale, Fort Lauderdale, Houston, Detroit, Miami.
Ooh, interesting.
What might Frontier have in common with another airline, perhaps, that operates on those routes?
I get the spirit of what they're trying to do here. Yes, as you put in the show notes here, Frontier smells blood in the water. And after, there's no illusion here. We saw last week they announced routes to Atlantic City. No other airline serves Atlantic City. No other airline has served Atlantic City for a long time, except for Spirit, unless you count American's landline bus connections to Philly, but that doesn't really count. So Frontier is they're just going all out now, trying to siphon off as much of Spirit's potential revenue as possible to really twist the knife in the back. That's just business, I guess.
I mean, that's opportunity.
Yeah.
If they can capitalize and gain some market share, good for them. Like we talked about when we talked about Spirit's issues and their going concern, that, I mean, if I'm Frontier, I'm thinking, okay, what can I pick up now in anticipation of picking up much more when Spirit ceases to be, if that's what I'm banking on?
And if Frontier can hasten that gradual demise, they're going to take every opportunity.
Off we go to Germany now, where Lufthansa has completed its 10% investment in AirBaltic for the vast sum of 14 million euros.
Okay, great to see some investment to AirBaltic, but 10% at 14 million values them at 140 million euros in total, which doesn't sound all that high or all that great, but if this is good for AirBaltic, then good. And this is now our third take recording this AirBaltic segment, but I'm going to make the same joke and you have to laugh at it again. But here we go. 10% of AirBaltic investment from Lufthansa just makes sense because at any given time, it feels like AirBaltic operates 10% of Lufthansa's short-haul fleet. Cue the laughter from Ian. There it is. Okay, third time's a charm. Let's get to the next topic.
On. We're sticking with Lufthansa, but now we're switching over to Condor, which, if you've been following the podcast for, 3 years now.
Been a minute.
So what happened was Condor had a special arrangement with Lufthansa that it had access to Lufthansa's domestic feeder network. So it could then send its holidaymakers abroad. Those arrangements in 2022, so Lufthansa ended that. There was an agreement that was in place. Lufthansa ended it 5 years ago. 3 years ago, a not court, but administrative body said, you violated antitrust laws. You can't do that. So they got their thing back, sort of, because they had already moved on and figured out what to do in the meantime. Now, a further higher court has said the administrative ruling had a bunch of procedural issues.
No,
and it can't stand.
Won't stand. Can't stand. That's
so
unfortunate.
Now Condor is appealing not the ruling, but kind of moving things forward while they try and figure out what to do about the actual structure of that feeder network. The other thing that's kind of going along at the same time is the European Commission's investigation into the transatlantic joint venture between Lufthansa, United, and Air Canada. So that is all kind of balled up together. And Condor has to deal with how to structure its business in the face of uncertain feeder network that they seem to have done okay with and seem to be doing quite well with their business model now. But then Lufthansa also has to deal with the fact that the European Commission is further looking into a real thing that they would have a problem with, which is the transatlantic joint venture, because that becomes a huge issue for them.
Yeah, very tricky for Condor right now. Not a great way to have to run a business to one day have a continental Europe fleet and then the next day not. And then it comes back and then the court says, actually, no, never mind. Really difficult for an airline like Condor that relies so heavily on connecting traffic. Because remember, when this first hit, Condor dramatically reshaped its transatlantic fleet, exited entirely at a lot of North American cities because those preferential fares connecting onto Lufthansa were so important. So to see this go back and forth for Condor, that ain't good.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty here is that the whole thing it did not address the actual issue here, whether or not Condor is entitled to feeder flights, but just cast everything aside on procedural grounds. So now I don't know enough about the German legal system to know where this ends up or where this goes back to, what part of the process it restarts at. But it's not great that this is carried on for so long.
No.
Jason?
Yes.
Swiss is now the latest to come up with an even more firsty first class. And they're calling it the Grand Suite.
What does that mean?
So this will be beginning on Swiss A350s and A330s and then extending to their 777 fleet. They will take the left side first row and the center first row in first class and give you some sort of divider or blockage so that seats 1A, 1D, and 1E become a grand suite. All to yourself.
So it's curtain.
Maybe? Unclear what type of thing they're going to put there, but curtain does seem what they're going to do. Yeah.
Okay. Things are getting weird with premium cabins on airlines these days between business class and business class suites and business class plus, and the odd but kind of sort of revival of first class and then premium first class thing. There's no standardization to any of this. It's all very confusing. If it's confusing for me as someone who does this professionally for a living, it must be unobtainium information for people just trying to book a damn flight. So especially with Allegris, none of this, or I think they call it senses at Swiss, they may have gone a couple of steps too far in differentiation. But hey, premium products are something for everyone. Even if there isn't someone to fill those seats because it's too confusing, there's something for every hypothetical type of passenger.
Every hypothetical person who is never going to book this.
Yes.
Because if you're going to book this, more likely, I mean, given the price point of these things, doesn't it at some point, like, I'm just going to fly private?
There are some people who will use a travel agent and will just say, book me whatever is most expensive. And for those people, there's this.
I want to meet those people.
I am not one of those people, unfortunately.
No. Well, I think fortunately, I think that would be a weird dynamic in this relationship if you were that person.
Yeah, I mean, I would hate it. If I had so much money, I could just say, book me on the most expensive thing, please.
The most expensive flight you can find.
I don't care what it is, just book it.
Tell Highfly to get the A380 out of the desert and start flying.
9H MIP, come back to us.
All right. We'll figure out this someday, maybe.
The transition here, Ian, is you know who else is having to call hi-fi?
That's a good one.
Yeah, Air Mauritius, potentially. Turns out when you take a bulk of your fleet all at once or in big spurts, all those aircraft, if you operate them equally, they're going to come due for heavy maintenance at about the same time. And when you're an airline that only has 4 A350s, that's a problem, isn't it?
It sure is. And so between September and December of this year, all of Air Mauritius's A350s will have to undergo heavy maintenance. So here come the wet leases.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because they actually did not take all 4 of their A350s at the same time. 2 of them were ordered and delivered to Air Mauritius, I believe. Actually, interestingly, they went via South African Airways, I think, or a couple of them actually did go straight to Air Mauritius, but those were much earlier. Those came in October and November of 2017, and then 2 more came via the not taken up units from South African Airways, but those came in October and November of 2020, so 3 years later. But both of those are also very close off the line. It's 145, 157, and 354 and 365, so they are quite close to each other. But that is some real bad luck that they have 4 aircraft delivered in 2 different batches that apparently all come up for maintenance at the same time. That's some bad aircraft utilization planning, I guess.
I think that's just how it works out for them. They're looking into wet leasing or some other type of capacity arrangement so that they can ensure their operations remain as unaffected as possible, because they have had problems recently with flight completion, shall we say.
Yes. Well, they also have some A330s out there as well, a pair of 200s and a pair of 330-900 NEOs. So there are other aircraft, but the 350s are the actual long-haul aircraft.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Here's an interesting idea. If you fly to Thailand, they will pay for you to fly around Thailand. I think this is a very interesting idea. So the idea is that if you go from somewhere to Thailand, they will then comp your domestic tickets around Thailand so that you can go see more of the country.
Are domestic tickets in Thailand expensive enough where this is going to move the needle?
I mean, I think people just like free stuff.
Free stuff is good if you don't have to jump through a lot of hoops to get them, I guess.
It sounds like it's one of those things where if you've booked a flight on certain airlines, then domestic flights on those airlines are now free for you.
Okay. Flights throughout this country are not known to be expensive.
No, they're not expensive.
They're actually known to be quite the opposite.
We're talking about $100 round trip, basically.
Less than that. There are flights I'm seeing between
that's the cap. That's the cap on the cost of the free.
I'm looking at flights between major cities and they're like $24 with 9,000 departures a day on Nuuk'd Air. So sure, if this moves the needle, if you didn't want to go see some cool stuff in Thailand because the flight cost $24 before, well, your ship has arrived, I guess.
You're all set now. So we'll see how that goes. They're debating that in the government now. If it goes into place, it'll go into place. Well, you have to fly to Thailand before the end of the year. So keep an eye on that if you were thinking to yourself, I should go to Thailand. And Lord knows that nearly every airline ever flies to Thailand these days or is launching service to Thailand. We haven't really talked about this on the podcast a lot, but it's very well known in AvGeek circles, especially among more military aviation focused peoples. The Royal New Zealand Air Force has 2 757s that are old and sad. And I believe at some point the Prime Minister of New Zealand got stuck somewhere because one of these went tech. They're finally replacing them with 2 A321 XLRs.
Hey, that's cool. Even I've seen these New Zealand 757s out here in New York for UN Week, I believe. But yeah, anyone operating a 757 for governmental reasons is probably operating quite an old, elderly 757. And we know even the U.S. here, Air Force 2 or whatever, the vice president.
The C-32s, yeah.
The C-32s, those have stranded people all over left and right. So this is just natural that the 321XLR would be the replacement for it. Don't know what's going to happen here. in the US to replace those 75s for the US government because Boeing doesn't have an equal product. So
737-10.
Doesn't have the range, doesn't have nearly the legs to compete with a 321 XLR. Can't, not even in the same class of aircraft. And it's also hypothetical, not real aircraft.
The 737-11 then.
Sure. What can go wrong?
Jason, if you were running an airline that was merging with another airline and you were going to have that merged airline operate a specific set of flights that didn't leave the borders of that country, what might you call it?
I feel like I've played so many mobile phone games where you manage airlines where it creates ridiculous names for just this situation. And I would go with like Intergalactic Airways.
That would be fun. That's not what they went with. The newly formed Algerian carrier is named Domestic Airlines.
Hey, it is what it says it is. This should prohibit them from ever operating a flight over any sort of border because then they'll have to change their name. It won't be what it is. But I like when airlines, their name is what they are. Wasn't there a Czech airline just called OK Airlines? Like, hey,
yeah, OK Airways.
They're fine. They're okay. They are what they say they are. So it's nice when things are what they claim to be.
There is that. So this is the merger between Tasly Airlines and Air Algérie, with Air Algérie basically subsuming the larger aircraft in the Tasly fleet and then creating domestic airlines.
Now, hold on. In the show notes here, you have Domestic Airlines because there's an exclamation point at the end of it. Please tell me that's real. And it's not.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just excited about it.
Oh.
That was just me personally being excited.
Well, personally, I feel like they should take that as feedback and it should be Domestic Airlines, exclamation point.
With an exclamation point.
Really, amp up the energy.
We will make a note of that and I will fire off a letter. So Vietjet is either creating, hundreds of jobs, investing hundreds of millions of dollars in MROs, aircraft, and other infrastructure, or they're about to go bankrupt. And the stories vacillate between the two every other week. This week, they're spending $100 million in an MRO facility.
Oh, where is it getting $100 million for this MRO facility? You know what? Don't want to know the answer to that. I don't want to know.
We'll be back next week with another story of how they owe some other organization $100 million that they have not yet paid. We'll figure out what's going on here one day. Speaking of figuring out what's going on here one day, this is a story that just keeps getting more and more bizarre. And when the book is finally written on 777 Partners, it's kind of one of those, techno thrillers, maybe, with a bit of like Big Short thrown in. So at the moment, 777 Partners, which was an investment firm that backed Bonza in Australia. They have backed other airlines here in North America. They were ordered to pay their former CFO's legal bills because the former CFO and the 777 Partners organization went at each other through the courts for a while, and the courts awarded the former CFO legal fees, which 777 Partners has not paid. They have, however, paid over $6 million to other law firms while not paying the $600,000 it owes their former CFO. So the court said, guess what? We're placing you in limited receivership now. You are going to pay this, and you're going to straighten out your act.
All right. Serves them right for being called 777 Partners, and I don't think they actually leased or had any 777s. It was mostly narrow bodies. So right there, we just talked about things that are named for what they are. This is named for what they aren't. So, it was all there from day one.
Yeah. So we'll follow this along and see how long they can limp around. But it's just such a bizarre turn of events at every turn with these guys. I mean, especially because there were no 777s involved. It was just a bunch of 737 MAX because they backed Bonza, they backed Flair. It was
suspicious the whole time.
Just a weird thing. The European Union Aviation Safety Agency has now proposed eVTOL noise requirements. So these go specifically to eVTOL aircraft, or not just eVTOL, but VTOL aircraft, rather than taking the helicopter noise requirements and the tilt rotor noise requirements and saying we're just going to combine those. These are going to be specific for VTOLs based on requirements that are not covered by the ICAO Annex 16, which deals with existing noise requirements. So this is like a whole new thing that EASA is working on, because they say we need something specific to VTOLs, because all of the surveys that we've done says everyone's concerned about safety first. Like, are these things going to fall out of the sky onto my house? And then how loud is it going to be when they eventually start landing near me? And so that's number 2 on the concern list. And so they say we want to have a level playing field for all of the manufacturers. We want to have certified noise levels so that we can benchmark everything across the board. And we want to make sure that these things don't noise pollute everywhere they are. So that proposal is out. We'll put a link to that in the show notes, and you can take a look at the proposed regulations. That will go through the end of the year, and the process will conclude next year ahead of what's expected to be a 2027 timeframe for the beginning of certification for these aircraft.
All right. Let's bring some of that noise limitation to current day helicopters. That would be fantastic too.
Wouldn't that be something?
That would be nice.
Okay. This is a story that just keeps getting better and better. And by better and better, I mean worse and worse for a bunch of people. If you remember, maybe a month ago, we talked about the fact that Iran had somehow acquired a pair of 777s. Actually, more than a pair of 777s, a handful of 777s, 5 of them. Those aircraft had been registered in Madagascar because they were supposed to be moved for maintenance. Well, they were moved for quote unquote maintenance, and they ended up in Iran.
Whoops.
The government of Madagascar got big mad about this. They took it as a national affront that they could have been used for such a purpose, to the point where a few weeks ago we talked about 2 people who had been intimately involved in the forging of documentation to keep those aircraft registered at Madagascar so that they could eventually be transferred to Iran. Those people had been arrested. Now, 22 people have been arrested.
Dang.
And there are 33
Good.
total individuals.
I'm shocked there could be 22 people in somewhere as small as Madagascar involved in the same criminal conspiracy to deliver aircraft to a sanctioned country. That's got to be a good chunk of the entire country. I don't know what the actual population is, but 22 seems like a lot for this kind of thing anywhere in the world, let alone Madagascar.
So all of the charges are ranging from official corruption, forging of documents, money laundering, abuse of power, and my favorite one is endangering state security. They are really upset.
All right. Well, you know what? I don't know if this comes true, but round of applause to the officials and the prosecutors and everyone involved in investigating this in Madagascar, because this is the kind of thing where if you look the other way once, it's going to happen again. And nobody wants to be known as the country that is the intermediary for illegally delivering aircraft to Iran. Like that's just not good for your reputation. So really nice to see that they are slamming the book down on these people. 22 people, though. That's with 33 people
22
wanted.
people arrested, 33 wanted for arrest. Yeah.
That's crazy for such a small country. Like, most crime rings, I feel like, overall are not that big to begin with. But for that many people to be involved in a very small niche thing, oof.
This is why I don't believe in most conspiracy theories.
No.
Because if it takes 33 people to forge enough documentation to transfer 5 777s, imagine what it takes for like actual serious major conspiracy theories.
If you are involved
it's just
in any serious major conspiracies, and
email
want to talk about it, drop us an email. It'll just be between us and you.
Perfect. And on that note, This has been episode 334 of AvTalk. If you do have anything you want to talk about or want us to talk about, comments, criticisms, suggestions, email us at podcast@fr24.com, and we will give those a read and talk about them in a future episode. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.